The continent of Asia is home to over half of the world's population, and happens to also be home to some incredible countries that go the extra mile in promoting liberty, safety, and LGBTQ rights alike. Today, we are going to explore the top 10 of these countries, working our way up from the bottom of the list and ending at the top. Before we begin, we will briefly address the methodology that will be used to determine the list, as it is my goal to base these videos on data and research and not simply anecdotal evidence. The truth is that it is possible to have both wonderful and negative experiences alike in any country on Earth, but for the sake of avoiding anecdotal evidence and isolated experiences that could be influenced by bias and unique situations, this list is firmly based on averages and verified statistics from reputable institutions in order to get as close as reasonably possible to presenting you with the absolute best and safest places for queer people to explore in Asia for 2024. In order to qualify for this prestigious list, countries require leading scores in two categories. The first score is for LGBTQ rights in particular, and for this we will be using scores recorded by the Equaldex Index, which I have personally found to be the world-leading resource for exploring detailed metrics on queer rights across the planet. The other score is that of general safety, which I will be using the Global Peace Index to determine, a ranking created by the Institute for Economics and Peace, a highly respected global think tank headquartered in Sydney, Australia, and one that frequently collaborates with the United Nations to produce world-class and accessible datasets on issues of importance for global peace and safety. The reason for the selection of these two scores is simple. Both are an equally fundamental component of what makes a country worthy of this top 10 list. If a country, for example, has solid LGBTQ rights but struggles with crime and violence against the general population, it cannot be considered for the safest country list. An example of this could be the Philippines. Additionally, if a country has low crime in relation to the general public and is considered safe in broad terms, but treats queer people terribly and persecutes them daily, then it is impossible for them to qualify for the list either. An example of this being a country like Qatar. In light of this, the score each country receives from the most recent edition of Equaldex's LGBTQ rights tracker will be combined and averaged out with the score that it also receives from the most recent Global Peace Index report. So that picking a country from this list gets as close as reasonably possible to being a guarantee for having a safe, fun, and accessible trip for us queer travelers in the year ahead. Our journey begins with a country that I imagine just about everyone watching today is already familiar with to one degree or another. Thailand has a reputation for many good things, ranging from its world-famous LGBTQ visibility to its beautiful landscapes bathed in tropical beauty and its delicious and world-renowned food, including delightful curries and tropical fruits, just to name a few. Queer travelers have been flocking to Thailand for decades now to enjoy all of this and more, and it is only fitting that they managed to make it into the top 10 on our list for safest LGBTQ travel destinations in Asia for 2024. According to Equaldex, Thailand receives a score of 61 out of 100 for LGBTQ rights, making it the fourth highest in all of Asia on this metric. An impressive score to say the least, and one that will likely rise sharply by the end of this year, as marriage equality is likely only months away from entering into law in Thailand, after it passes through the Senate, as it has already done in the House. Changing one's legal gender in Thailand is not currently legal, even after gender reassignment surgery, nor is the acceptance of a third or non-binary gender. It is worth noting that living as a transgender or non-gender conforming individual is considered to be quite safe and acceptable in Thai society, despite the current lack of legislative progress in the area. Thailand already has extensive anti-discrimination laws on the books that safeguard against both gender and sexuality-based discrimination, making it a leader in the region in this regard. Unfortunately, the only reason why Thailand is shockingly ranked as number 10 and not higher comes down to its scores in terms of general safety, where Thailand receives a score of 9 out of 100, making it by far the lowest in the category on our list today. Despite cities like Bangkok and other touristed areas being very safe, Thailand does struggle with above-average violent crime rates and internal insurgencies in certain parts of the country, well out of view of most tourists. Combining the two scores gives us an average score of 35 for Thailand, which, while not incredible, is likely to increase massively over the coming years as positive new legislation comes into effect in the near future. So, come 2025, Thailand may be near the top of the list. It is not hard to understand why Thailand is loved by many and for so many countless reasons. And Bangkok is one of the most open and accepting locations outside of the Western world, where people are free and safe in expressing themselves, all while enjoying this quickly modernizing city. Thailand as a whole has many national parks and rainforests, stunning and unique wildlife, and warm sandy beaches that combine to make this country a global favorite for queer travelers who want to relax and just be themselves. Moving north now, away from the warm tropical beaches and towering skyscrapers of Thailand, we come to Nepal, a mountainous country tucked away in the mighty Himalayas. When you think of LGBTQ-friendly places in Asia, Nepal may not spring to mind, but probably should going forward, as Nepal actually has the highest score for queer rights on this list, only taken down to 9th spot due to its low scores in general safety. The country's 70 points out of 100 for LGBTQ rights as outlined by Equaldex are no joke, and highlight the incredible social progress the country has been making in recent years. The status of marriage equality in Nepal is still up in the air after a marriage between two individuals assigned male at birth made headlines last year. However, one of these individuals is transgender, and the government has yet to finalize legislation cementing marriage equality across the board, so much like Thailand, the story in this regard is still developing. The ability to legally change one's gender is also currently ambiguous in Nepal, but a non-binary gender is recognized by the government and has roots going back to the region's ancient culture. Nepal also does have some protections against discrimination in relation to orientation, but gender-based anti-discrimination protections are not nearly as robust or clear. In terms of general safety, Nepal struggles a bit, with a score of 22, higher than Thailand and than much of the world more generally speaking, but nevertheless the second worst score on this list of particularly safe countries. When combining the scores for queer rights and general safety, we come to a solid average score of 46, which on a global scale is not at all a bad showing. While Nepal's most famous location, which is of course Mount Everest, is without a doubt majestic beyond measure, it is certainly not the only thing that Nepal has to offer. The capital city of Kathmandu is absolutely brimming with unique culture and atmosphere, Nepalese food is deeply flavorful and delicious, and many people enjoy the religious sites across the country and the ability to learn more about spiritual subjects from local leaders who have devoted their lives to their beliefs. Nepal is certainly a unique and surprisingly accepting country, and is an excellent choice for all queer travelers seeking adventure while still supporting a country that supports us as a community. Moving now even further north, we come to a country that may be one of the most surprising on this list, due mostly to the fact that it is rarely spoken of in terms of LGBTQ rights on the internet. This country is none other than the strikingly beautiful Mongolia, ancient home to the famous Mongolian Empire. Coming in at 8th place on our list today, this country on the Eurasian steppe is a hidden gem for queer travelers, to say the least. And on the subject of LGBTQ rights, Mongolia does have the lowest score on our list today with 43 points out of 100, although it is important to note that on a global level and even a regional level, this score is not by any means terrible and still puts it in the top half of countries globally in the area. The lack of queer rights is more a product of slow modernization of laws rather than active discrimination. Marriage equality has not yet been introduced in Mongolia, and it is even currently banned under its 1992 constitution, with no new legislation or court cases that seem to be addressing the issue in the works, so it'll likely be at least a few more years before we see any change or progress in this area. Legally changing one's gender in Mongolia is possible, but only with surgery, highlighting the need for progress on gender equality as well. Thankfully, solid anti-discrimination laws do exist and highlight the country's potential in the future in the area of queer rights. For those interested, the primary reason why Mongolia is currently higher than Thailand and Nepal on today's list for safest queer travel destinations in 2024 is because of its quite respectable score of 57 in terms of general safety, making it quite safe compared to the average across Asia. Combining these two scores gives us a score of 50 points for Mongolia and cementing its spot as the 8th best country for queer travel in Asia for 2024. Mongolia is absolutely filled with wide open spaces for you to explore the land and local culture alike. Ulaanbaatar is a fascinating city and is also the capital and largest city in the country, where your journey will likely begin. The people of Mongolia are renowned for their resilience, hospitality, and connection to their traditions, and any LGBTQ person who finds themselves visiting Mongolia will surely be impacted deeply by this unique and accepting country, one with a proud history and hopefully a bright future. If seeing Nepal and Mongolia on our list today did not already surprise you, I have a feeling that our number 7 spot just might, as it is the often overlooked country of Laos. And yes, this country is spelled Laos, but the S is silent for anyone curious about the correct pronunciation. But, interesting facts aside, Laos barely beats Mongolia by 1 point to secure the 7th spot on our list. With 48 points for LGBTQ rights, Laos comes in with a solid showing for the metric, making it the 11th highest out of Asia's 44 countries accounted for. Currently, Laos does not have marriage equality, and there are currently no bills or court cases seeking to change this fact. Unfortunately, gender-affirming care is also restricted, and no third gender is recognized by the government, although, in some instances, changing one's legal gender can be achieved through extensive medical interventions and surgery, which, of course, leaves much room for improvement, especially considering the lack of anti-discrimination protections within the country. Much like Mongolia, Laos mostly is stuck in the past due to ignorance rather than active oppression, and generally, queer people are free to live their life openly and without direct persecution. When it comes to general safety, Laos receives a score of 55, far above countries like Thailand and Nepal, and it is this fact that contributes so heavily to it securing the 7th place on our ranking for the safest queer travel destinations across Asia in 2024, despite the fact that Thailand and Nepal are generally more socially progressive. Now, with both scores averaged out, Laos comes in with 51 points, an admirable score both on a regional and global level. Laos is an interesting and rarely visited country by people outside of the region, which makes it an especially exciting place to explore. The nature of this Southeast Asian country is gorgeous, and its traditional ways of life can still be enjoyed and experienced across its countryside, making Laos an excellent choice for the more thrill-seeking queer travelers to give a chance to, despite its often more traditional and rural way of life. The land of K-pop, plastic surgery, kimchi, and world-leading technology is also the 6th best country in Asia for safe LGBTQ travel in 2024. South Korea has in recent years become famous in the mainstream due to internationally loved K-dramas and music, but also has been in the spotlight for lagging behind similarly advanced countries around the world in terms of queer rights. But despite this, South Korea does still manage to pull off a decent showing that secures it the number 6 spot on our list today by a solid margin of 6 points. Currently, this highly developed East Asian country has a score of 46 out of 100 for LGBTQ rights, which happens to be quite high by global standards while still leaving much room for improvement. Marriage equality is not yet the law in Korea, and this does not look likely to change in the near future. Changing one's legal gender is possible in Korea, but only after surgery and forced hormone therapy, leaving much to be desired on this front of trans rights as well. Additionally, anti-discrimination laws are only applied in some instances and are not robust enough to be classified as solid anti-discrimination protection in any real sense. In terms of safety, South Korea manages to score a respectable 58 points, placing it near the middle of our list today by this metric and showing some room for improvement, but an impressive score nevertheless by global standards. as this metric takes into account things like unresolved disputes and conflicts with other countries, risk of terrorism, and militarization. Factors outside of South Korea's direct control and caused by North Korean and Chinese aggression are a big part of why South Korea is not ranked higher in this regard, despite the country still possessing a far better than average score. Averaging out both scores today gives South Korea 52 points, a score that is not perfect, but still cements this incredible country as one of the safest places for LGBTQ tourism in Asia in 2024. The enormous and almost futuristic city of Seoul dominates Korean society, and its metro area is home to nearly half of the country's population of 55 million people. Delicious and refined cafes and trendy bakeries, and also tasty street foods, are delightful. Jeju Island, off the country's southern coast, is a paradise worth exploring, especially in the summer, and Busan, the second largest city in the country, is a more laid-back alternative to Seoul. LGBTQ travelers can explore this spectacular country with the knowledge that they are safe and respected despite Korea's need for continued progress in some areas. And knowing you are safe when traveling is truly a wonderful feeling to have. Jumping now into our top 5 today, we go back down south to the beautiful and rapidly developing country of Vietnam. Despite its difficult past, modern-day Vietnam is generally considered to be a close friend and partner of the free world and an emerging champion of human rights in the region. Securing the number 5 spot in all of Asia is no small task, and something for Vietnam to be very proud of. In terms of LGBTQ rights, this Southeast Asian country receives 54 points, 8 higher than South Korea, and the 5th highest on our list today by this metric, mirroring its overall placing. Marriage equality does not yet exist in Vietnam, and it does not appear to be a priority of the government at this time, so it'll likely be quite a few years away. Changing one's legal gender in the country is only possible with surgery, and no third gender is recognized by the government. Discrimination is only illegal in certain instances, and progress in this category is also needed in the years ahead. Vietnam gets a pretty impressive 60 points in terms of general safety, which makes it one of the safest countries in Asia, and gives it an impressive standing globally as well. Combining the scores gives Vietnam 57 points overall, 5 higher than South Korea, and an incredibly impressive score for the Asian continent. Vietnamese food is loved around the world, and for good reason, as there are countless delicious dishes to enjoy. The country has both beautiful beaches and natural areas that are contrasted with its quickly modernizing and growing cities, in addition to a culture and history that blend together influences from Europe, China, and of course indigenous Vietnamese cultures into something truly unique and magical. Queer travelers are sure to feel welcome and safe in this exciting country, and it is without a doubt worth putting on your list. When you hear the name Bhutan, you may first picture their remote and sacred mountainscapes, or perhaps the country's incredibly iconic flag with a dragon in its center, or maybe its reputation as a very traditional and mostly closed-off country. All of these would certainly be appropriate, but another thing to add to your mental list is the fact that Bhutan is now the 4th safest country for queer travel in 2024, and will likely remain high on the list for years to come, despite only decriminalizing being LGBTQ recently in 2020. With 47 points for LGBTQ rights, Bhutan comes in just 1 point above South Korea and 1 point below Laos on this metric. Not world-leading by any means, but highly respectable by Asian standards. Bhutan does not have marriage equality yet, but activists are currently working within the country to change that fact. Changing one's legal gender in Bhutan does not require surgery, but does require a medical diagnosis, and no third gender is currently recognized within the country. Additionally, no anti-discrimination protections exist to date, but activists are hopeful this will be changing in the near future. In terms of general safety, Bhutan really shines brightly with 84 points in the category, the second highest on our list today. Combining these two scores gives us 65 points, a solid 8 points above Vietnam in 5th place, and a truly respectable score in every way. Unfortunately, while very beautiful, safe, and quite open socially in recent years, Bhutan is not an easy or cheap place to visit. The government has made the conscious choice to only welcome wealthy visitors, and the average week-long trip to Bhutan can cost between $5,000 and $10,000 due to mandatory tourism packages and guides, expensive flights, and other restrictions aimed at ensuring all tourism is overwhelmingly beneficial to the country with little to no risk of any negative side effects the government seems to associate with lower-income people. For this reason, unless you are incredibly wealthy, and do not mind the elitist take on tourism, Bhutan may not be the country for you, and quite honestly, is not for me either. But it still deserves a place on our list due to genuinely high performance on both metrics, and the strong signals from queer activists within the country that continued progress on social issues is likely coming in the near future. The country that has secured the third spot on our list today is one that many watching, and quite honestly even myself, feel should take the number one spot, as it is the only country in all of Asia currently to have marriage equality, on top of being very safe by nearly all metrics, tourist-friendly, proficient in English, and overall lovely across the board. This country is of course Taiwan, and while it may feel like Taiwan should be number one, keeping to our methodology today puts Taiwan in third place. I have spent a solid amount of time in Taiwan, and always felt beyond welcome and safe, and cannot stress enough how delightful of a country it is. And yes, to any CCP Chinese trolls, Taiwan is an independent country, and always will be. Taiwan has earned 66 points for LGBTQ rights, which is not only a leading score for Asia, but puts it 38th globally, really only behind many Western countries and some in Latin America, but ahead of the vast majority of the world. Since 2019, Taiwan has had marriage equality when it became the 25th country to do so, and the second country in the world outside of the Americas and Europe, and the first in Asia. To this day, only Thailand and Nepal even are likely to be legalizing gay marriage in the near future on the entire continent. Since 2021, people in Taiwan have been able to change their legal gender with no restrictions, and while there is currently no recognition of a third gender, Taiwan remains an incredibly accepting place to be trans and non-binary. Additionally, Taiwan has extensive anti-discrimination laws in place, making it a world leader in this aspect as well. A little fun fact is that just a couple of weeks ago, the president of Taiwan, Tsai Ing-wen, went out of her way to congratulate a Taiwanese drag queen for winning RuPaul's Drag Race, highlighting just how open the country is to queerness in a fun way. As for general safety, Taiwan receives a score of 68 points, the fourth highest on our list today, and only brought down by risks of escalating conflict with China and other social issues largely stemming from Chinese aggression and fears of a possible future invasion, which has led to a high degree of militarization in the country. China can't stand the fact that Taiwan is a rich, democratic, liberal, and free country, and that it may one day inspire people within China to demand the same rights and quality of life, which would ultimately be a nightmare for the Chinese government. Despite this, the combined score for Taiwan on the list of safest queer travel destinations in Asia for 2024 is 67 points, a score that is respectable, but fails to capture just how truly incredible this country is for LGBTQ tourism. Queer visibility in Taipei is perhaps the most vibrant in all of Asia, with only cities like Bangkok even coming close. The central mountain region in Taiwan is full of breathtaking nature and relaxing hot springs, and Taiwanese food is so delicious that I am getting hungry now just thinking of it. If you visit, you need to try their famous soup dumplings known as xiaolongbao at Din Tai Fung. It is a chain, but the quality is still incredible, and the experience is worth it every time. If you are a queer traveler who values feeling safe and accepted while exploring beautiful cultures and supporting people and places that support us, I would recommend putting Taiwan at the very top of your list. Number 2 on our list will likely be a bit of a surprise to many, as its historical record on queer rights is atrocious, and its currently high ranking is only due to incredibly recent improvements in LGBTQ legislation. Singapore criminalized being gay until 2022, which, considering how rich and advanced the island nation is, comes as a surprise to many. Yet, in 2024, Singapore has secured the second spot for safest queer travel in Asia, highlighting how quickly countries can make positive changes in direction on key issues. Despite its terrible recent history, Singapore now has managed to get a score of 52 for LGBTQ rights, which places it near the middle of our list on this metric. Gay marriage is explicitly banned in Singapore, and progress on this front is likely to be very slow. Changing one's legal gender in Singapore is possible, but requires surgery, which is clearly problematic, and also no third gender is recognized by the government. Anti-discrimination protections in Singapore are also limited and leave much to be desired, but are still better than the norm across much of Asia, and highlight the progress the country has made in recent years on these issues. Hopefully, there will be more progress soon. Safety is where Singapore really shines, with a score of 95, making it not only the safest country in Asia, but one of the safest on Earth. Combined, Singapore secures a score of 73, incredibly high by both regional and global standards, despite its recent history of LGBTQ oppression. Due to its extremely safe and peaceful nature, Singapore is now a solid choice for LGBTQ travelers who have some money to blow and want to experience the beautiful cityscapes and architecture of this small but influential country. Cultures from South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia all collide in Singapore and lead to some incredible and diverse culinary experiences. While I would personally place Singapore a bit lower on the list, behind countries like Taiwan and Thailand, due to Singapore's extremely recent issues with homophobic laws, there is no denying that in 2024, it belongs in Asia's top 10 for safe queer travel as one of the world's most safe and peaceful countries where being queer is finally legal and increasingly accepted in society by a majority of the population. We finally come to the number one spot on our QK travel list for safest LGBTQ travel in Asia for 2024. Perhaps you have already guessed what this country is by the nature of it not already appearing before now, and if you guessed Japan, you would be correct. Japan has secured the number one spot, and by a wide margin, with 7 points more than Singapore has in second place. When it comes to queer rights, Japan scores 65 points, only 1 point behind Taiwan for this metric, an incredible showing by Asian standards and a solid one even by global standards. Japan still does not have marriage equality, and while certain courts across Japan have been ruling for years this lack of equality goes against the Japanese constitution, the government seems unwilling to budge on the matter, although some more progressive jurisdictions in the country do have limited civil unions already in place. Still, public support for passing such a law is high in the country, and it seems only a matter of time now until Japan does finally have marriage equality. When it comes to legal gender change, it is possible, but only with surgeries along with many other harsh restrictions, and like most other countries on the list today, the government of Japan does not yet recognize any third gender. Anti-discrimination laws against queer people in Japan are complicated and not at all comprehensive. Some jurisdictions like Tokyo do offer employment protections, and housing discrimination is illegal across Japan. While work still needs to be done in this area, Japan is still far ahead of the majority of the region on this front. Safety and peace are where Japan really shines, with a score of 92 in the area, making it one of the 10 safest countries on Earth. Averaging out the two scores gives Japan the overall top score of 80 points, which not only places Japan as the winner today, but also would put them in the top 20 globally, and the highest outside of the Western world for safe queer travel. Japan hardly needs any introduction when it comes to what this magnificent country has to offer. Tokyo remains the largest city on Earth to this day, and is one of the most advanced across many metrics, especially with its rightfully renowned public transport systems. Japanese food is a culinary treasure, and while we already are familiar with sushi and ramen in most of the world, the variety of unique dishes and extremely high-quality ingredients Japan produces is beyond what I can begin to cover here today. Ancient Shinto temples with immaculate energy are scattered across the country, and Japan is one of the countries that can boast world-class beaches and remote icy wonderlands on its northern islands where monkeys frequently enjoy dips in the hot springs. Now, to balance out all this apparent perfection, Japan does have relatively low English proficiency, merchants often only accept cash, and over-tourism is starting to become an issue in historical parts of Japan, like Kyoto in particular, where the government has now banned tourists from some areas. But despite this, for respectful and peace-seeking queer tourists who want to experience the home of anime and samurai, Japan is an excellent place for so many reasons that easily could become a video in its own. Now, many people may be thinking that Taiwan and even Thailand should have been above Japan on this list, and truthfully, I agree with that opinion on many levels. However, as this list is about the safest countries for queer travel and is based on data rather than personal opinion, Japan remains a clear winner, despite me personally being able to recommend Taiwan as my own personal top pick. Regardless of which country you pick from the list today, it is hard to pick a bad option, as they are all regional leaders in queer rights and general safety, and it always feels good to give our tourism to locations that value us and uphold our right to exist. For our weekly Queer News update today, I want to mention some very positive new developments that have been taking place in the area of trans rights as of late from across Europe. In the past month, Germany, Sweden, and Czechia have all made incredible strides for trans and non-binary rights that are definitely worth a mention. The German parliament voted to ease the process of legally changing one's gender to male, female, or a third diverse gender option without the need of a doctor's diagnosis as long as the individual is over the age of 18. Sweden voted to lower the age where an individual can legally change their gender from 18 down to 16, a move that will also make it easier for trans young adults to begin gender-affirming care at 16, which many experts now see as an ideal age that is neither too young nor too old, which is of course a hotly debated subject both within and outside of the community. Czechia's constitutional court this week struck down the legal requirement for surgery before an individual can change their gender, and brings Czech law into alignment with most of Western and Northern Europe in the area. This is a huge win for trans people in the Central European country, and one that highlights Czechia's commitment to democratic and socially developed values. Today's video has no sponsor, so I guess that means it's sponsored by me. If you desire to support this channel and what it stands for, please consider becoming a member here on YouTube, where you can join me for $1 a month, as I seek to make this my full-time career as soon as possible. For those more familiar with Patreon, you can find a link in the description. I do not know which one between YouTube memberships and Patreon is better, or which one most of you prefer, so please let me know. For now, I will be active on both, so we can chat, talk to each other directly about queer news, travel, and just get to know each other better. And just watching today means the world to me. I hope that you stay around and join our queer kingdom, as we fight to make the world a safer and freer place for all of us. Until next time, QK out.